Going live. Hello and welcome to For Fox's Sake. My name is Pete Selby alongside James Terrell, Johnny Towers and Joe Healy. Welcome. If you're watching live, get involved, get commenting, whether you're watching on Twitter, on Facebook or on YouTube, get commenting on the show. If you're listening back to this, maybe tomorrow on the Monday morning commute, then warm welcome to the podcast. And make sure, first of all, you give us a 5-star review. I was looking into those 5-star reviews when it comes to the podcast. And what it does, it helps other people find the podcast. So that's a good thing. And we want people to find the podcast. So make sure you do get involved. We're doing this on a Sunday evening because Leicester play on Tuesday. So we've got the preview tomorrow with Rob Hayes. Looking forward to that. Talking all things Southampton. So I better be on. As a Southampton commentator, I better be on, shall I? So I'll have to try and worm that way into my diary tomorrow. So look out for that. But we're talking all things Leicester this weekend against Birmingham. Comments and also head to forfox8.news. Big news on forfox8.news. We've been live since the 1st of January. And of course, it costs only a pint. It's £5 a month to get all access, full access to forfox8.news, all the articles on there. And we're now over 100. So just imagine 100 articles have been posted since January the 1st. I think we're actually over 100 by now. And that includes all sorts. So on a Sunday, you get a quiz every Sunday that I do. So there's a nice quiz to do. There's also the top 100 players. There's also in-depth articles regarding all the news at Leicester at the moment. There's plenty of it. So do make sure you head over to forfox8.news, have a peruse around, and if you subscribe, it costs £5 a month to do so. And what that does, it helps keep this podcast absolutely free as well. So, gents, what a terrible weekend that we've had of Championship football. Leicester currently in 21st place as I look at the Championship table. Lost their last 3, level on points with Blackburn. 4 points ahead of Oxford, but we're only 1 point away from 19th Portsmouth. Plenty of games to go in the Championship. We won't ask James how many games there is to go because he doesn't know, as I was listening back to the previous podcast. But we lost away at Birmingham. That's going to be our main topic of conversation today. But what I want to do with this specific show, because tomorrow we'll have the preview regarding the Southampton game on Tuesday. So we're not going to be looking forward to that game. We might mention about who we will be playing and hopefully who we want to see in the starting lineup. But it's more about how the new players have integrated, what happened yesterday, and also, and I hate to kind of use this term because I've been talking about it this afternoon regarding with Leicester, but was it a defeat that unfortunately came down to a couple of moments? But then when you're in a relegation battle, those moments seem to crop up more often than not, don't they? So first of all, James, I want to know from you, and the first question I'm going to ask all three of you, was the defeat yesterday, was it different to what we've had so far this season? Was it down to the fact that we had a terrible error by Ricardo Pereira and then a red card? Or was it the overall performance? I'll just say right now, James, I'm slightly leaning towards, I thought it was a good performance, but against the side who have got a very good home record and who are in good form at the moment. But it was down to a couple of silly mistakes. But overall, we can't put that to one side, because if we do, we end up in the Leicester City who got relegated from the Premier League the first time around in that scenario. And we kind of think everything's going to be fine because those are going to work their way out. They're going to be ironed out. So what do you put it down to yesterday?
I mean, I'm not entirely sure what game you were watching, because I'm not sure if it was the same one that I was. I mean, stats, Birmingham had 70% possession, 38 shots to our 13, 14 chances created to our 4. Their XG was 1.44, ours was 0.3. So while there were individual errors, it was pretty bad as a performance. We scored another high XG goal, didn't really create any chances. The team looks a little bit dysfunctional, which is to be, there's some understanding behind that. You've got a new centre back, you've got a new central midfielder. So you can let them off for that a little bit. But yeah, it was pretty turgid. No intensity, no spontaneity, not much creativity. With obviously the caveat that you said that Birmingham have only lost one game at home so far this season, so it's not just us that have found it really difficult to go and win there.
I agree. Obviously, the stats say that, Jono. But when I look at those stats, I can lean towards that red card after 32 minutes, which would mean that the percentage of the possession would be massively in favour of.
Yeah, I'll give you that.
And then obviously chances created, etc., etc. But if you look up to that half an hour, and we're not talking about 10 minutes, we're talking about half an hour of football. Leicester had got back into the game. I completely agree about in terms of the XG, in terms of goals scored. Obviously, you're talking about the vast majority of the game down to 10 men, but even before that, it still took a wonder goal basically from Fatawu, which we've been relying on for a lot of the season. But I thought there was a little bit more about Leicester in that 30 minutes. First of all, getting back into the game after a really poor start and conceding very early, only 3 minutes. So I thought there was a little bit more to kind of hold on. If I'm trying to hold on to anything from that game, I just thought there was a little bit more about Leicester in that 30 minutes before it then all went very wrong after the red card.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't watch the game, I have to confess, but I was listening to it on the radio in the car. And yeah, by all accounts, the start was all the same as what we've seen all season regarding sloppy errors, giving a goal away early. All of that we've seen many times so far this season. But the second half seemed to be more encouraging from what I was hearing, is that regardless of the fact that we were down to 10 men, they were actually trying to, put performance together. And I think, as soon as the red card happens, the game's over, isn't it? I think it's damage limitations at that point. And we still weren't able to keep them out. So, which is a shame, because you would have imagined at that point you would backs to the wall, get and just try to preserve what you got, which is at that point 1-1, isn't it? And we just weren't able to keep them out. So it's just, I think, another performance which just shows the inadequacies, I guess, of the squad and what we've got in terms of players available. Lascelles coming in, I'm hoping, will be the difference maker between staying up and going down. So it's all important to keep him fit, I think. Other than that, some of the new signings maybe being integrated in the next few weeks. We'll see how that goes. But I'm not terribly optimistic at the moment that I'm seeing any or enough green shoots at this point to suggest that we're going to go on a run and pull away from relegation. So yeah, I'm feeling a bit down in the dumps after yesterday, frankly. I'm hoping that we just do see a bit of a turnaround in the next game. We were back at home again. We've had a couple more days to get the new signings integrated, and then we'll go again, I suppose, at home. I think I don't know. You probably know better than me, but Southampton aren't in great shakes either, and I think that anyone can beat anyone in this league. So I'm hoping that we will see a bit of a turnaround in fortunes as well as performance in the next game, and we'll start maybe pulling away. But I'm not hopeful of it.
Yeah, they're one of the most bonkers sides, actually. Do make sure you join us for the preview tomorrow with Rob Hayes. I'll be there again, commentator for Southampton myself. So they are a completely bonkers side. They have done something in the transfer window which we needed to do, and we didn't. And we'll come on to that today, actually. I'll mention it today. Joe, just the same question to you. If you look at the terrible error by Ricardo and then the sending off, are we looking at the game in 30 minutes? Are we looking up to the sending off and going, right, that's what Leicester City can do at the moment? That's the performance that we need to talk about. But then after half time, they've come out with a bit of a, as Johnny was saying, like they came out with a little bit of a spring in their step. And it's obvious that they've responded to Andy King in the 2 games he's been in charge after half time. He's given them a half time talking to, and they came back against Charlton and looked good, obviously missed the penalty, etc. Whilst 2-0 behind. And they did the same whilst down to 10 men until Lisa Stanfield scored the second goal for Birmingham. Am I being a little bit deluded, or is there a little bit more to hold on to from the performance-wise than maybe just is apparent with the overall scoreline?
Yeah, I was watching a different match to you and James, I think. Although I absolutely with you, Pete. I mean, I was watching through completely legal means of a 3:00 kickoff. I'm down in Somerset, which is basically a foreign country to the Midlands anyway. So I did watch the game.
The
It was on.
buffering must be extraordinary on that match. The buffering now over there. Do you know what I mean? It depends how quick the local stream is flowing. Yeah, which I imagine at the current time is very quick.
We have to wind it up down here. But yeah, I watched it. First of all, the camera angle. That's one of the worst camera angles and shots I reckon in the Championship. What all that was about. At one point, we were about to take a free kick. I mean, it was really close up. You couldn't even see the top of the ground. And then at one point, we're going to take a free kick, and it just panned to a couple of open-mouthed Birmingham fans, and we didn't see the free kick. I mean, the coverage was pretty awful. That's another thing. But yeah, I thought we looked pretty good. Ricardo's error is unforgivable. There's a whole conversation to be had about poor old Ricky P. I think that conversation
That's question two, Joe. That's question two. Yeah. So go for it now.
Yeah. I mean, most people, I think we're all going to agree. Really, I don't think you can have much defence for him. I think there's a real argument for Aluko starting. Poor old Ricky P. He hasn't been the best captain. He's been a great player for the club. I will not debate that. And he's mine and my son's one of our favourite players. But his time's up, I think. I'm going to say it out loud. I don't want to. None of us want to hear it. But yeah, that was a bad error. I just watched the extent. I watched the match and I've just watched the extended highlights back, and it's one of those that gets worse every time you see it. You know, he's caught napping. Absolutely, he's asleep. And what's the guy's name? Who begins with an O? He just nicks it off. Yeah, that's right. Yeah, Osman. Sorry, he just nicks it off him easy as you like. I'm a defender. I'd be pretty mortified about that. Yeah, that's another issue. So, but after that, I did feel like we rallied. It was a shame. We can talk about Abdul Fatoui's goal, which he took very, very well. Well, I thought Mavididi was looking pretty good up until that point. It's a shame he got taken off because he hung it up real nice. Anyone could have got their head on that, and it just nicely came back to Fatoui for him to take it really well. But he crossed it in lovely, and he was looking pretty sharp. And then Andy King decided to take him off. So yeah, when you say what have we got to analyse, it's basically those first 30 minutes. I thought Joe Aribo looked all right. Strong in the tackle, wasn't getting shoved off the ball. I think the cells will make a real difference. But James is entirely right to talk about the statistics. These are, we can say that it was down to 10 men, the possession and the shots on goal, which we're hamstringing ourselves for the second game in a row. The foul from Bobby Reid, yeah, it's a yellow, it's a red, it's one of those. He doesn't need to be making it. It's a bit like Aaron Ramsey's earlier in the season. He doesn't need to be making it on the halfway line. Don't give the ref a decision to make on that one. I don't think he's done it on purpose, but he's still done it. And then, yeah, these stats, whether we're down, whether we've got 11 men on the pitch or 10, unfortunately, we are still not getting that much possession. I mean, it's fairly even in games, but the real thing is not many shots on goal. But I was very hopeful, and I'm probably got blue tinted glasses with the new signings and everything, and I haven't let the points deduction slow me down. But yeah, we got 30 minutes of in the last two games. Really, we've got about 40 minutes to talk about, really, of players on the pitch before it becomes a different conversation.
Yeah, I completely agree. It's such a strange situation with the way that they're playing at the moment, and the amount of, as you were saying, there's amount of football that we can really talk about, because the first half against Charlton, complete disgrace, and then the second half played really well, missed a penalty, and effectively after that, all of the air that's left in the balloon is gone. And then on Saturday, as soon as the red card happens, again, the air goes out, and then Stansfield scores that goal at the start of the second half. It's we'll come on to Ricky P and also the red card, because I think those two are the big turning points, aren't they? They're the two turning points in the game. We mentioned, James, about Ricardo Pereira the other week, and we were saying both that he shouldn't be playing at right back. I have Ricardo Pereira. If you've gone on to for Fox8.news, we're doing a countdown of the top 100 players of all time. I'm doing the countdown, and I have had sleepless nights over this countdown. We're talking every player who has played for Leicester Foss and Leicester City, and I've put them in some kind of system of popularity, of success, of how long they've played for the club, moments that they've had at the club, and tried to work out the top 100 players. And we're down into the low 70s. And the one player that we have in the squad at the moment who is in that top 100 is Ricardo Pereira. They're not giving away anything. And he's not appeared yet. Okay, he's not appeared yet, because the one line I have with Ricardo Pereira is that at any moment in Leicester City's history, there's probably only about 10 or so players who you can maybe argue were the best player in English football in their position at that time, playing for the football club. And I would argue that Ricardo Pereira was one of those 10, 11 players. So that means an awful lot. But I think his time at fullback for the football club is gone. But I think there is a very strong argument to use him in midfield. And because we still see him on the ball as a good player, apart from in that moment. And he was that young player who was caught looking for the attacker who's coming towards him, whilst not looking at the ball and getting it all wrong, wasn't he? That inexperience, lack of concentration, where it shouldn't be happening with a player of his experience. It shouldn't happen, yet it did. And then Osimhen came through and scored. The one thing I will say about Pereira was, I thought in the second half, I thought he played actually quite well and handled Osimhen, who was all over him in the first half, especially after the goal. I thought he actually battled back quite well. And also the fact that we don't have any fullbacks, really. We have young players, but overall, it's not an area of the squad that we have a lot of depth at all. And we didn't address that in the transfer window. So we may have to keep him in that position at the moment. The second point, Joe, you mentioned about the captaincy. Again, me and James were talking on transfer deadline day, or should I say the day after. And I think we both agreed. And I said, the first thing I would do is give the captaincy armband to Jamal Lascelles. Now, that's not taking it off Ricardo Pereira. I'm giving it to Jamal Lascelles. Now, I know Ricky P might not like that, and it might seem like that, but I'm not taking it off him because of the performances. I'm giving it to Jamal Lascelles because I think he would be a better captain for the football club, and he's exactly what we need. And even though I think he's going to come in with all the experience and telling exactly what's what with the defensive line, and also probably helping Andy King in that line as well, I think giving him the captaincy armband will just give him that extra few percent that I think we need. So that's the first thing I would do as well. Just a few comments before I ask the gang once again. Leicester's goal of the season will just be Abdul goals compilation, says Thomas Simons. Yes, it will be, won't it? And then we've got Buzzer. Lascelles was great and Aribo looked okay. And then Thomas again, most promising thing about the game is King. He isn't afraid to mix it up and drop people. Worst thing we can do is get yet another manager who reverts to the type. Yeah, I agree. I mean, I think a lot of the players, when they came off around about the 60, 70-minute mark, etc., like Lascelles, that was always going to be the plan, to get them up to speed and also maybe to protect them for the game midweek as well. With Joe Aribo, my first thought, and again, don't want to jump onto Rob Hayes' back, but with the preview, he's a person who I would probably play further forward. If they're going to play that three in midfield, I would put him further forward to be getting into the penalty area, to get on the end of the crosses, use that height and the ability that he has to score goals. I know he's not going to go greatest goal scoring record, but he can finish. But using that height, and then of course you've got the natural player like maybe Winks to come into midfield alongside Skip. We shall see. But I'll just echo that first question to James. Ricardo Pereira, what would you do with Ricardo Pereira? And also with that, the captaincy armband as well, would you give that straight to Jamal Lascelles? And also, we'll talk about the red card. I think it's a typical attacker's challenge. I can perfectly see why it's given a red. Again, I can see why people think it maybe is a yellow card. Andy Moore posted on FFS Pod on Twitter, do you think it's a red card? Do you think it's a yellow? Lots of people said I can see why it's given a red. Some people said it's definitely a red. I can completely see why. Studs up, straight leg, didn't need to make the challenge. The guy's got his back to the halfway line. It's not a counter-attack or anything like that. There were plenty of pink shirts around. Didn't need to do it. So probably a red card for me. What do you reckon, James?
The red card, yeah. I mean, I think if he'd given a yellow and we were Birmingham City fans, we'd be going absolutely mental. So I think that's probably the easiest way to judge it. I don't think you can really argue against it. I don't know if VAR would have overturned it. It's kind of difficult to say. I think in terms of Pereira, the captaincy thing I don't really care about. Don't think it would make that much difference swapping it. Everybody makes mistakes, right? And footballers make mistakes. Depending on where you are on the pitch, how fatal that mistake is basically increases the closer you are to your own goal. I suppose you have to look at it over a period of time. And I think he has struggled this season. I think the extra physicality in the Championship is something he's not quite equipped to deal with, as he probably would have been 3 or 4 years ago, which is not really a criticism of him. That's just a product of, time with us all. Whether you could move him into midfield, potentially. I wouldn't be able to tell off the top of my head how often he has played in central midfield or kind of on the right-hand side. You could maybe, if we move to a back three, would be a way to get him out of the team without sacrificing some kind of dynamism on the right-hand side. But yeah, it was his fault for the goal. I don't really think it was necessarily his fault that we lost or that we have been losing. A football team should still be able to be competitive when they've only got 10 men. Yeah.
I agree. And I think if with Ricardo Pereira, we've spoken about tactics all season essentially, and most people would reach for 3 at the back as an emergency. That it's not working. Let's go 3 at the back. I think it's the natural first port of call. I don't think it's the case necessarily for Leicester. I think it personally would suit the club at the moment. I think it would suit them very well because it would give them that extra player in midfield, whether that be a Winks or a Ricardo in midfield, or even someone like a Hamza Chowdhury. Obviously, he's now injured, so it's not really a case. But it would have suited Leicester, and I was banging. You're playing 3 centre-halves already, and this was my criticism about Martí Cifuentes. He's playing 3 centre-halves, Jono, already, with Nelson at fullback at the time before he was fired. So why didn't they move to that back 3 anyway? But that's a whole conversation that's actually doesn't need to be made because he's gone now. But yeah, just your thoughts on the red card mainly, and also Ricardo Pereira. I think necessity, and again, I look at the way he bounced back after that error so early. I think he actually had a half decent game after that, but it still was a really bad error. I agree with James regarding he's not the sort of player he was. Obviously, all of his skill sets, all of his positives, all of his 20 out of 20 on Football Manager, etc., that he had in his heyday, they're all gone. He's not the rampaging fullback anymore. He's not the guy who, even in the Championship winning campaign, managed to move into midfield an awful lot and help dictate a game from a fullback position to moving into midfield and then occasionally getting forward. I thought that might be the case this season when he scored early on in the season, but it's just not happened. I think it's only just purely down to his injuries. It's just taken its toll, which is sad to see. But also, we can't be carrying a player, can we, that's had past glories. And if it's the case that he literally has physically gone at the game, we don't have the capacity in this 11 to carry a passenger, because at the moment we can't keep 11 on the field.
A few things there. I mean, with regard to Ricardo, I'd echo the points that Joe was making. He's been for a long time, one of my favourite players that we've ever signed, to be honest, certainly in the last few years. And he's been such a brilliant player for us. Injuries have taken their toll, but he's a shadow of his former self in terms of this season. He's really has struggled, and there's been many a time where I've been watching him close at hand at this in the stadium, and he's just not close or tight to the winger that he's supposed to be dealing with, and he's miles away from the player he used to be, and it's really sad to see. And it's an indictment of the way the club's run, that we haven't got another option really in coming in. We that's another conversation altogether with regards to how the club's been run. But it's sad to see, and I think he's probably a player that probably should have moved on a couple of years ago, frankly. But Rudkin gave him a 5-year contract, didn't he? I remember when he was coming back from injury a few years ago, and so he's still here, and we should have moved on a lot of the players, and I think he's one of them, unfortunately. With regard to the red card, I've seen it a couple of times from a few angles online, and I think the guy's made a meal of it, frankly. Yes, he doesn't need to make the challenge. He's left his foot in, but he was genuinely going for the ball by the looks of it, and he missed the ball and he caught the player. That's all well and good, but I didn't see it as a red card, in my view. I think he was just unlucky to mistime the tackle. He's on the halfway line, didn't need to do it. So it was a stupid thing to do, because you're opening yourself up to having a decision made against you. But for me, it wasn't totally reckless and totally out, over the top. So for me, it wasn't a red, but it was definitely a yellow. But you can see why it was given as a red. So I'm not going to moan about that. But yeah, it's weird that we've had 2 games like that where we've had 2 crazy decisions like that have resulted in a red card. And I wonder whether it is somehow down to the fact that we're in this position, that the players are trying probably too hard in the wrong way, and trying to stick one on, or trying too hard to win the ball in the wrong areas, or whatever it is, because they're under pressure. So I'm wondering whether that's an element of why we've seen what we've seen in the last few games with regards to red cards and stuff.
I agree. I completely agree with your sentiments regarding the red card. The one thing with the red card, let's just put a few comments on screen. Apologies, Jono and Joe. This is just above your face. It's clear Ricky has lost a yard of pace. We just don't have any credible alternatives. Do we put the young lad in against the Saints, even though he got sent off last time on his debut? That's a conversation for tomorrow, Thomas, on the preview with Rob Hayes. And Andy's joined us. Andy from for Fox8.news that you've all seen and heard on the podcast as well. Make sure you head over to for Fox8.news and read all the columns regarding Andy Moore on Leicester City. And no choice to play Ricky with Hamza out. When JJ's back, suppose you could play Skip in there and then play Winks in the middle, or put Decordova Reed there, clutching at straws, really. Yeah, it is slightly clutching at straws at the moment, isn't it, with the side? But I agree with you, Jono, regarding the red card. I personally, the first thing I look at with these red cards, from a commentary point of view, actually, I don't look at once the challenge is made, you've got, first of all, the reaction of the player on the ground. Now, first of all, pinch of salt, okay, unless it is a reaction that carries on and it's like, hang on, the player is really injured, you can tell. So pinch of salt, I never really look at that. I look at the reaction of certain teammates. You might get 1 or 2, let's say, known characters come over and want to start a fight. Okay, but what they're trying to do, I'm going to call it the Cucurella player, who will come in and just start pushing players around. Don't care. All they're trying to do is wind up certain players. They'll grab their shirt, they'll grab their nipple, whatever they want to do to try and get a reaction. And then they'll fall over and they'll point at the person and say, get them sent off. That's their tactic. Again, I'm not really bothered. What I look at is that I look at, first of all, the player who made the tackle and their reaction, which I think gives an awful lot away. okay, they could turn around to the referee straight away and start waving their finger at them. Okay, if you've seen that there has been a physical contact made, that instantly to me means they've actually laid one on them and they're trying to get out of it straight away. That's my personal opinion. But then if you think, hang on, I don't think they've touched them, then they do that, and I look at that and go, okay, that's them saying, look, he's not actually done anything. And then quickly, very, very quickly, I look at the referee. And that's the person, because guess what? The referee is the person who sends them off. Now, okay, in the Premier League, you've got VAR. And I look at the referee on Saturday, and if you see that challenge and you look at the referee as soon as he's showed on camera, and which is quite quickly, and what he's doing is walking over, and he looks like a guy, in my opinion, who doesn't know. Now, whether that's because the angle was wrong, where he hasn't seen it properly, but for me, I think he doesn't think it's a red card. I generally think that. And then all of a sudden, he's looking at the assistant referee, okay, and they're having a conversation. And I think it's the assistant referee, Joe, who actually overall gives the decision and tells the referee, because there's a little bit of time there. So I think there's a little bit of a conversation being had. Now, maybe the referee's asking the assistant referee, was it the challenge that I thought I saw? And he's going, yes, actually it was. But I just look at that decision and go, there was a little bit of a doubt. Overall, I've got no problem with the decision, actually. I really don't. But I think that the referee had a little bit of a conversation there, and maybe it was the assistant who gave the overall the red card. But after all that explanation, I still think it's perfectly fine sending them off for that challenge. And I think he was just a bit overexcited is the wrong word, but he was told to go and make challenges, get himself about the field. But unfortunately, that's not his tackle to make, is it?
I thought you were going somewhere else with all that, Pete. I enjoyed that. You made some good points. I thought you were going to say the crowd, particularly in this one. I think the crowd made up the ref's mind for him.
Yeah.
You watch that in slow motion, and
interesting.
Before he's gone down, and it's close to where the crowd are on the side by the halfway line.
Yeah.
And they're all up like that. They're all up like that going, come on, ref, come on, ref. So, like I said earlier, just before...
As you would be doing if you were a Birmingham.
Yeah. I mean, I would say
exactly. They're perfectly...
They've all gone up. They've all gone up with their Peaky Blinders cap on. They've all lifted the brow, shown the razor blade. They've got soot on their nose. You know, it's an intimidating sight for the referee. Yeah,
it is. They're perfectly within their rights. They're all strolling in their waistcoats and their flat caps and all the rest of it. But to be fair to them, they're perfectly entitled. But like I say, you watch that, particularly in slow motion, and you give the ref a choice to make in those situations, and the crowd are absolutely. If it was a home for us, you'd be very happy to see someone walk for it. As it happened, we were away, and they're straight on the ref. The ref, like you say, he's talking to the linesman, everything else like that. You just try not to, like I say, it's very similar to Aaron Ramsey, however many games ago when he got sent off. Just don't do it. Just don't do it. Or, it may even be a mistake, but it's a hell of a time to make a mistake from Bobby Reid. And it's one of those, Bobby Reid, sometimes he makes some goodwill with me. And then sometimes I think I chuck him in with Jordan Ayew and all the rest of them. But just don't give the ref. Just don't give the ref
that's the line. That's the line. Don't give the ref the decision to make. Absolutely. I think that kind of sums it all up. Although Richard Houston, interesting, says anyone who thinks that's red doesn't know football. The ref gave the decision because he hit the boards and played to the crowd. So kind of going along the same lines as yourself, Joe. There, Richard, I'll be a bit concerned by that, by going along the same lines as Joe. And also you've got Paul. These players need to train in the mud. They're not cutting it at Seagrave. I've got on a list, gents. I've got on a list topics to discuss once we are either down or once we are safe in this table regarding of how the club will move further on, and how we will progress, and how we will basically press the reset button in the summer. What needs to change? This list is growing. Honestly, it's next to the shopping list on the fridge, and it's a lot longer than the shopping list. And as you can tell, I like my food, so that shows a lot about this list. And Seagrave comes up quite a few times, and I think over the last 4 or 5 days, especially since the points deduction has come through, the conversation about Seagrave, because obviously we're going back a few years, and the general atmosphere at the football club that changed. The words.
Have
Holiday
you been
Park,
there,
etc.
Pete? Have you been like on a tour around it, like seeing it properly?
Yeah, well, I mean, originally it was Park Hill Golf Course. That's where it was built on, and they kept 9 holes there. My dad was a founder member at Park Hill, so it's an area that I know very, very well. Yes, to say a word, when it first opened, yeah, been there, worked there, done quite a lot of stuff there and that. So yeah, it's amazing. But then again, you go there, and even in a professional capacity, you go there in a professional capacity, and you're concentrating on the job. But also because it's Leicester City Football Club, my club, the club I support, the club that for Fox8.news, that we work for, that we do the podcast for, etc., that we've been doing the podcast for Fox8.news for 12 years, talking about Leicester City, commentating on Leicester City for 10 of those years. It's my club that I both want to do well now and love to talk about their previous years, and now, especially for Fox8.news, talking about the history of the football club, etc., and especially as they start getting older, I get too riled up in that. Okay, so I have to keep my head down and look down and kind of go, right, I'm here to do the job, whether that's commentating, announcing, or whatever. But it's an amazing place compared to a lot of the places I've been to in football. It is amazing. I've worked an awful lot. Rob Hayes, exactly the same. We've done an awful lot of work at St George's Park, okay, which you would imagine is the best training base in the country, because that's where the home of English football. We've worked there more times than you've had at hot dinners, and it's an amazing place. But Seagrave is better, by a long way. And the stories that you've heard about Leicester players basically starting there or changing there from Beaver Drive and going, well, hang on, Beaver Drive was Beaver Drive. Okay, it was old fashioned, but it was even though the pitches were very good, it created its own atmosphere. You know, all of a sudden you can hear the Birch down the corridor shouting this, that, and the other, and what's going on, and it's that kind of atmosphere. And all of a sudden you move into this wonderful training ground, and you can completely understand why the players have all of a sudden thought that they are better than that they are. And maybe, and I would not just put it down to the players, I would put it down to the coaching staff as well. And why I believe that there's only been one coach, and obviously results have dictated this as well, but one coach who's actually got to grips with the training ground and the vastness of it, because it's massive. It's absolutely massive. And I think that's Enzo Maresca. And he looks around and he got the training ground, he got the atmosphere correct, and he got the results. But then since then, I just think the place has been almost too big for them. And there's been places, and this might sound a little bit childish, but there's almost been places to hide. So when you see and read comments from journalists saying about players taking their dogs for walks and being able to stroll around and not really do a lot, it's absolutely true, because you can see it, because it's completely vast. You wouldn't be able to do anything at Beaver Drive. You go to the furthest point in one of the fields to take a corner, and if you fart before you're taking a corner, someone in the car park will know, because it's that kind of tight and that kind of atmosphere. Honestly, you could maybe run out to go training at Seagrave, and you could probably play 9 holes before anyone's realised that you're not even there. So if you're a player who's not maybe fully committed, who's maybe just looking at, oh, I'm bringing in 70 grand a week, and I'm just going to have this as a bit of a DOS for a couple of years, you can completely see why. And that's why in the summer, the manager's decision is the most important decision at the football club. Not who's the CEO, not who's the director of football, although I think that and the manager comes hand in hand, but the manager, because they've got to get to grips with not only the first team and the first team squad and reforming the squad, because half of them are going to go, but he's got to create the new atmosphere at the club, and an atmosphere that we've not had, or only for one season, under Enzo Maresca. Remember, got to grips with that squad. They all played for him. We saw it as a team. Now, as supporters, now we might not have agreed with some of the tactics and maybe the style of football, but I think we all agreed that the players were really playing for Enzo, weren't they? And probably, and in fact, the whole time we've been at Seagrave, I think that's the only season that the club or the players have actually played for the manager in that one season. And I know results kind of dictate. So that's a whole different conversation.
I'd like to say a few things on that, and I think there's a lot of truth in what you've been saying there.
A bit of a rant there. Sorry.
No. But
very good.
I think that there's an awful lot of truth in that. What you've been saying. I think with regard to Enzo coming in, I think there's I remember seeing a clip of Top or Rudkin showing Enzo around the training ground when he first arrived as the manager. It's one of the clips that came in from the club, to showcase the new manager and blah blah blah. And Enzo walking around with Rudkin, and Rudkin's showing off all the facilities and go, this is where the sauna is, this is where the jacuzzi is, all of that stuff. And Enzo just said, "Where's the training pitch?" And I remember distinctly this was commentated on by, I think, another. I can't remember who it was, but it was definitely picked up on, because I remember hearing it in a podcast. It might have even been you and Rob that maybe mentioned it. And his focus was all about, okay, we've got this, that, and the other facilities. We've got all of this going on, but show me where the training pitch is, because that's where the work happens. That's where we need to get down to business. And I think you're right that Seagrave is a bit of a holiday camp probably for a few. And it's, I think with the right intentions of the club, it was trying to set the standards high when we were in a position where we were gunning for European football and everything else. So I think that it was the right intentions to try and build something like that, especially as we were trying to build an academy as well. And I don't know whether it's right. I'm right or wrong in saying that we're starting to seeing the fruits of the academy start coming through.
Oh, I think we are. Yeah, so, I think we are.
So whether Seagrave is going to start paying some dividend back to the club at some point, I don't know, but I think there's definitely an awful lot of truth in the fact that at Beaver Drive, they had to drive through a council estate or through Narborough Road or whatever to get to the training ground and see how normal people live.
I agree, and Joe, just before we come in, Joe, I completely agree. And by the way, Richard's just said something which is completely what I was going to mention. And Richard, thanks for saying this. It's an easy story, Seagrave. We're not doing well. Let's blame the training ground. And I was going to I was just remembering, obviously, going over what I just said. Absolutely. Now, I think first of all, Seagrave had to be built, and I love that it was built. And obviously, V-Shine wanted it to be built, and they used the right money because they sold Harry Maguire and went, right, we're going to use this money. We're going to build a training ground. But I think, yes, it's an easy thing to say, oh yeah, they're not doing very well, so yeah, it's Seagrave's fault. But I think it generally is for some of the squads that we've had. Definitely. Seagrave has basically has pushed a few players towards underperforming. I generally think that, but it's not the training ground. It's first of all players being given the contracts maybe they shouldn't have been given, but also maybe they shouldn't have been signed in the first place. And the overall managerial status of the club in terms of manager and director of football, that's the issue. The players have taken advantage. Just like when you have a supply teacher at school and all the kids at school, all of a sudden, the nicest kid in the world couldn't be asked because all of a sudden the supply teacher came in because you could relax and do anything. And I think that's the case with Seagrave. All of a sudden, things have gone wrong, and all of a sudden, managers have been maybe slightly weak, not the right manager at the time, etc. And also the director of football giving the big contracts, etc. at the time. And all of a sudden, Seagrave becomes quite an easy place to maybe hide and just take over a big wage.
I think what you're alluding to, Pete, is the culture of the club. And I think when Shai was around, there was a strong head at the top of the club who was, creating the culture that he wanted to, which was, a family club, somewhere where you were, embraced as a family in terms of the players. You take them out, he would treat them well, but he would expect as well on the flip side for them to perform and to be part of a bonded group. Now, I don't think that we've had that ultimately since he's sadly sadly moved on and passed away. And we haven't, and maybe COVID was a part of that as well. The fact that, you know, there was no fans in the stadium. We moved to Seagrave at a similar time. Top taking over probably, you know, and he alluded to that in his interviews, that during the COVID times he wasn't able to come, he wasn't able to, and all of that I think has eroded what Vichai was trying to build in terms of a culture, in terms of a family club, in terms of embracing the fact that we're, you know, working together. And I think that that's all gone. It's totally gone. You know, now we're in a position where we've got essentially a load of mercenaries earning fortunes in a holiday camp. And if you've not got the right people to lead it and set the right culture, then you're going to get what we've got. And I think Enzo came in and definitely set that agenda and set that culture. And I think that's what we need to get back to. 100%.
Absolutely. I'll bring in Joe. I agree. And I was talking today about Top, and I says the one thing you can't accuse him is not putting the money into the football club, and also I think not caring for the football club. I think he's incredibly naive. Okay, incredibly naive, and he's almost being played by John Rudkin. Basically, that's the way I can see it. And and you can imagine Vichai walking into Seagrave, and also, and not all of a sudden the headmaster's here, but also kind of in a way, this is the guy, like you said, he's going to look after you, but he demands the best. And if it doesn't come, then there you go. But also, I think we've lost the ability to actually give a player a contract at Leicester City Football Club and then wait for them to prove themselves and then reward them. It seems like we're rewarding them whilst we're signing them. Harry Maguire will be a prime example. We sign him, we give him a basic contract. He plays really well. We give him then a very big contract, which includes a huge buyout clause. And then all of a sudden, a couple of years, year and a half later, he then goes to Manchester United for that big money whilst earning good money. But he's proved himself at the football club. That kind of that way of doing things is just completely gone now. And we need to get back to that. But that might be about 2 or 3 years down the line. Joe, what you were going to say?
Yeah, I just had a point on the training ground, really, and I am not a happy clapper, or I'm not signed up to KPFC or any of those things. But one thing you can't really say, there's a real certain irony, because I think they've made a lot of bad decisions over the last few years, and I've listed them on this podcast. But thinking that, okay, I can completely see why you would think, right, let's build a brilliant world-class training facility. And we may not be the biggest, you know, we may not be like a Man City or a Liverpool or whatever, but what we can offer players is a really world-class facility to come, kick on, and maybe you'll end up at one of those clubs. I genuinely think that was the intention. There's a real irony that apparently it's just had the opposite effect, really. And I don't think you can blame, for once, and I very strongly say for once, I don't think you can blame the hierarchy for that, because I think it was quite a good decision. I really thought, you know, 80 million, the Harry Maguire money, you know, I really thought that was a good decision to kick on for the club. The only one that they've made. I don't really think it's their fault. And the guy commenting, you know, it is easy to blame the training ground, but it's just ended up the complete opposite, it seems, of what they intended it to be. So yeah, you know, on the BBC, Matt Piper talks about, you know, no hunger in paradise. It's that sort of thing, it seems, really.
Maybe.
I agree. And James, I went to, and I said last week, I went to the Legend show at Loughborough Town Hall.
Yeah.
And there was Tony Cottee, Matt Elliott, and Muzzy Is It. Now, Matt obviously works for the football club, and of course, he's got all the stories in the world, and I imagine he's got his own point of view. And I know Matt Elliott personally from being in the press room and that at the King Power and that, and I know he would do. TC had more of a comment about the fact that he wouldn't be maybe the player he was in his day now because they only play one up front, etc. And this is a guy who scored 100 goals before he was 20 in the top flight of English football and probably worth 100 million now. And then you came on to Muzzy Is It. And I have not stopped thinking about what Muzzy Is It said during that Legends night. Really telling from a guy who you don't hear from often. And you don't film in those nights, even though this couple on the front row would not stop putting their camera up and filming, and everyone kept on coming over and saying, like, stop filming. This lady just couldn't stop. Anyway, so I don't really want to go word for word for what he said, but basically he was bemoaning the state of football nowadays. He doesn't like watching it because it's very much back and forth, etc., and it's not quite what he played. But also he says they don't have to play my football, but there's no hitting the balls in the channels, there's no crossing the ball for two centre forwards, etc. It's not that sort of football anymore. And then they started talking about Marty Cifuentes and managers, and Muzzy said along these lines about managers and players nowadays, once they get to a certain level and they earn a certain wage for a certain amount of time as well when it comes to a contract, because it's so much money, unless you are ultimately very driven as a professional sportsman to go further, to better yourself, or to even just honor that contract, it is very easy now for people to kind of just edge off 5 or 10%, which you see on a football field. He sat there, he goes, if you ask anyone on these sorts of shows, if you're off by 5 or 10%, you're way off. You're way off. You need to be right on it. But because there's so much money now filtering down the system to a club like Leicester, some of these players have been given these huge contracts, and all of a sudden a wonderful facility that they turn up to all the time, and all of a sudden they just go, happy days, I can just slightly ease off here, do you know what I mean, and see out this contract. This is great. And managers as well, taking the safe option, saying, look, I'm a 4-2-3-1 guy who's going to play this football. It's not what the club need, and it's not what suits these players, but I'm going to do this. And guess what? If it doesn't work out, I'm going to get sacked, earn a lot of money, and then another club's going to come along. I'm protecting my brand, as Muzzy said, and basically another club will come and employ me because I play this style of football. I'm not going to take the risks and change formation and maybe adapt to suit the players and try and forward the club that I'm on at the moment. I'm protecting myself because there's so much money in the game. I can earn a lot of money elsewhere through being sacked and also then being employed a couple more times. Think of Ruben Amorim at Manchester United, prime example, playing a specific type of football, even though it's completely not worked, doesn't work for the team, but he sticks to it. And he even said he doesn't care about results. It's all about just his style, protecting his style, his brand, because he's going to earn a lot of money through his life. I mean, you can't argue with that. And having Seagrave kind of, it allows Leicester to have those unfortunate type of players. And it takes a strong manager to get rid of that. And we haven't had a strong manager.
I know Are we going to end up with Russell Martin now?
I'm about to say exactly that. That's you.
Segue into. Are we going to end up with bloody Russell Martin?
I think
no one wants it.
We probably will, and you know, that just is an indictment again on the vision or lack of that. You know, we've currently got.
Well, I've. The rumours today were that Russell Martin went odds on. I didn't see it, okay? And I've said before, the most volatile market in betting, not just in football, in any sport, the most volatile market. So someone has to fart the word Russell Martin in a toilet somewhere in a bar in Leicester, and the price will drop, okay? Someone puts 10p on a manager, it will completely collapse, okay? That's the way it works. And I don't think he went odds on today. So, and even if he went odds on, we've had managers 100 to 1 on who have not been manager of a football club. So I wouldn't worry about that. I think the football club are waiting for Andy King to try and turn it around, okay, in a Tonda type of way at Southampton. And that's a lot of it is to do with finance. But also, secondly, I think it's mainly down to, and this would be from a planning point of view, getting in a director of football or a technical director, I think they called it, a technical director who surely needs to be the first person who then helps appoint the manager, because they've got to work very closely together, James, haven't they? That's a very crucial role. And we've heard in recent days that Enzo couldn't even reach the director of football at the time, John Rudkin, when he wanted to talk about players being signed. So I think the football club will want Andy King to succeed, so then they can bring in this technical director who would then help appoint a manager that they can work with.
Yes, I think probably if you're a casual football fan and not kind of loser obsessives like we are, you probably don't realize how much influence a director of football and a technical director now does have on the football club and on the football team. And actually, I mean, Gareth Southgate did an interview last week where he talked about how that they were gaining more power, and he actually said that he wasn't bothered by it. But obviously, he kind of he's part of that system, and he's implemented that system in England. I think the director of football definitely needs to come first, or they need to come together. Otherwise, I think we're just going to get stuck in a merry-go-round again that we have been for the last 5 years. I mean, it's very interesting what you all just been talking about in terms of Seagrave and the club culture. And it's interesting you mentioned Muzzy Izzet, because when I was about 9, probably, or something, I went to Beaver Drive with my stepdad to watch training, which you could do in those days. I don't know if they'd have put a thing up in the intervening years. And the assistant manager was shouting very, very aggressively at Muzzy Izzet for how bad he played at the weekend. That weekend, I'm always very hesitant to criticize players for not trying or being mercenaries. Partly because I don't know how true it is, and partly because it just feels a bit, I don't know,
Easy
childish.
target.
Yeah, just a little bit childish in some ways. But I think actually the point that you made, that Muzzy Izzet made, that maybe now there is so much money in the game that this idea that you do actually have to be a very dedicated sports person to see beyond that. Yeah, it's actually that's an interesting idea, and something that I could actually see manifesting in real life. That I mean,
it's signing the personality, isn't it? It's all right signing the footballer, but you've got to sign the personality as well. I'll just bring in a few comments as well. As infrastructure, King Power could have paid for the ground out of their own pocket. Though we're just talking in the comments there regarding maybe it should have been the ground done first rather than Seagrave, for example. It was Top's vanity project. Let's get it right. The stadium should have been the first extra revenue, and that would have dealt with the PSR deal on the pitch, and off the pitch deals with itself. Andy mentioning, I've got something coming on Russell Martin tomorrow. So interesting. Head to for fox8.news regarding Russell Martin. Very interesting character in the world of football. Daka would have come into this category. He's never improved since he came in, and never made the effort to improve away from the club. Also, I think that's where Brendan Rodgers' idea of signing silver medalists work. They have the hunger and appreciate where they are. Signing experienced players takes away the hunger. And yeah, you look at the likes of Vestergaard, who overall, obviously in the championship winning campaign was excellent, and I don't think he's down tools per se. I don't think it was the perfect signing. I don't think we should have signed him, but I get what you mean. You're signing players who maybe have gone past their best and just wasn't needed, and they've looked at the training ground and gone, hang on, this is great. All of a sudden, here's a 3-year contract, 70 grand a week. Happy days. You've got the crowd. His other half is one of the talking points with Russell Martin. The manager, what manager wants to take on this shambles? Says Paul Collins. Interesting, and again, that's a conversation for another day. Andy King made his debut as a player the year we got relegated to League One, and was still with us when we won the Premier League. Is he now destined to do it again as manager? Very, very interesting.
Wow.
Regarding about the manager who wants to take on this shambles, the thing is, we're trying to stay up, and this podcast is called about relegation, and the relegation battle commences, and the idea of this season is purely staying up. I don't think it matters who plays well and who doesn't. I really, and also, to be honest, and this sounds a bit sad, really, but I don't care. I don't care. All that Leicester need to do is stay in this division, because as well as they've been terrible this season, absolutely awful, and it's been dreadful for a couple of seasons. This might be a little bit diluted, but it's still the case. We've been talking about this amazing training ground. We've got a fabulous ground, and we've got an owner who, again, I was called very naive, would still put his hand in his pocket too much, it turns out, in the last week, as we found out, to buy players and to finance players and to give them too much money, probably as wages. But What we do have, though, is a very, very good football club at Leicester. And what we do have is a very attractive football club through the infrastructure, etc., and the recent history, and also some of the players who hopefully will be there next season. Only a few. And for a project, it's a fantastic project for a manager. A lot of players might go, players like Ricky P, for example, and a lot of players at the end of their contract. Some of them, i.e., most of them, will be very welcome to leave. But what then you would have is probably a nice transfer budget, maybe boosted by £30 million for Abdul Fattawu, more than likely. Can't see him staying next season. And then you would have the ability to purchase what would need to be a new side, but then a new side for one of the biggest clubs in the Championship. So as much as it's doom and gloom at the moment, and it is, as long as we finish on goal difference outside of that relegation zone next year, we still would have a chance to be looking towards the playoffs. And one of the comments made by Top, which was laughed at by a lot of supporters, and maybe rightly so, was that every year it's about promotion. Promotion. We're going to win the league. We're going to win the league next season. But next season, we could still win that league. We could still get promoted. Again, with the right manager, etc., we could get promoted. We could win the league. Couldn't we? We could win the league. My wife making her first appearance on For Fox's Sake. She's going to be mortified now. But we could do. Okay, that is not a pipe dream. That could seriously what could happen. But we need to appoint the right manager. And first of all, we need to survive in this league. And we're going to be talking all things Southampton tomorrow on the preview. Last thoughts, gents. James, Jono, Joe, anything more regarding the game against Birmingham, or maybe a look towards the future of what we've spoken about in the last half an hour? I've really enjoyed, especially the last half an hour chat.
Well, I asked ChatGPT earlier to...
Thanks, James. Jono, what do you want to say? No, go on, James.
Where's this going? Where's this going?
The average survival points for the Championship.
Right.
So, the average is 44 to 47. Some teams have been relegated with 55. So it's a bit like the 40 points in the Premiership. It's 44 in the Championship, but you should aim for 50. So we've got 15 games to get 18 points. Should be doable.
Well, we shall see. I'm a big believer. Jono?
I think, yeah, I'm on the side of optimism in terms of staying up at the moment. I haven't got any evidence in the last sort of 4 or 5 games at least to say that it's going to be easy. I think it's going to be a real struggle. But yeah, I think ultimately we should have enough. And I hate saying that because we've said it before. But yeah, I'm really on the fence, and I know that Joe keeps on pointing the finger at me about being on the fence about things, but I really don't know where we'll be, and I don't think game by game, I don't think we know where we're going to be either. I'm just hoping that the Andy King effect will start to kick in. The new signings will start getting embedded and integrated into the team. I think we need to start playing probably all 4 of them. I'd totally welcome that in the coming weeks. And hopefully we'll have enough to drag ourselves away from the bottom 3. I think hopefully we'll have enough over the likes of Oxford and West Brom and Blackburn. Maybe we've got Blackburn on the last game of the season, and that could be a pivotal game, isn't it?
Oh dear. I mean, I think, Joe, I think we've spoken about the game against Birmingham for the first half, and I think it's been like a cathartic experience for all of us in the last half an hour. I think we've got a lot off our chests, haven't we? I think we all feel a little bit better. But just to make you feel a little bit worse, Joe, we're going to be talking about the survival chances. I think we all think that we probably have got enough to just survive. But the problem is we just haven't seen it on the field in recent weeks, months, or years.
Yeah, it's pretty damning, isn't it, that we're all sat here talking about a relegation battle and can we survive in the Championship? I mean, all of us, apart from James, who is apparently Mystic Meg, none of us really saw it coming. I would like to say in that episode where James correctly predicted we'd be in a relegation battle, I said we'd be third, and that's still on. That is still on.
Well, technically, I suppose it is technically, yeah.
It's still on. And if we get to the playoffs and we get promoted, that's third as well. So come on. Maybe Pete can give me some decent odds for that. But
$1 million.
What I do want to say, actually, we have been a bit doom and gloom cathartic session. I wanted to raise one completely different point, if I may, at the end, which is I really enjoyed the chat about Filbert Fox on the podcast the other day, and I've got my uncle is the guy that's very much responsible for getting me into Leicester City. This is an original. He was knocking around Filbert Street in the late 70s, early 80s. And I don't know when Filbert Fox actually really came along. But here's the scarf. It still stinks of fags because my uncle was a big rolly smoker. But it says follow Filbert Street and the Foxes. And it's I think it must be 79, 80, something like that.
Wow.
It's still good as new. So I just wanted to say that I've never heard of his wife. What's she called? Fanny Fox or something like that. But
Vicky.
Okay.
Vicky
Fanny
Vixen.
would be a better name, wouldn't it? But there we go. I never heard of her. She was short-lived, was she?
I don't quite know what happened with Vicky Vixen, but I'm sure Philbert's wearing 50, isn't he? Because he's 50 years old. He's one of the oldest mascots around. Cousin Dennis.
I mean, like I say, this is late 70s, early 80s, so that's not far off that, is it? 40 years at least.
Leicester City women got a Vicky Vixen. I mean,
I didn't see one down at the King Power against West Ham, but if you do know about Filbert's wife and also the name of the cousin, they're part of the Sunday quiz every week on for Fox8.news. There is 10 questions on a Sunday released, and there are some absolute doozies on there, mainly because I have done the quiz, and there's some really hard stuff, and you go questions all the way back to the Foss days, by the way. So if you think you know your stuff, head to Fox8.news, and every Sunday there is the quiz. And another plug for Fox8.news. It costs £5 every month. Okay, it's the price of a pint. It keeps this podcast free, and the preview, and the women's football show, and all the specials that we do. And on there you get all full comprehensive coverage of Leicester City Football Club with full in-depth articles from the likes of Andy Moore, from Rod Hayes, and myself. And also you get the top 100 countdown, any breaking news. You get proper in-depth articles from Andy Moore, especially, who's working full-time on for Fox8.news. So you're not talking a little part-time thing. This is a full-time role at for Fox8.news. Head over there, check it out. If you like what you see, then do sign up, okay? Sign up for a month, and then you can see all the articles that are on there. Again, it's been going since the 1st of January, well over 100 pieces on there. There's features, there's opinion pieces, nice little fun bits as well, plenty of nostalgia, plenty of interviews coming as well with former players, and also some very exclusive competitions only for members as well. So you can sign up for a month. If you like it, then you can carry on. If you don't, then obviously you can cancel it after a month if you fancy. No worries. But please head over to for Fox8.news. Tell your friends and family as well. And on the podcast, give us a 5-star review, because it helps other people find this podcast. And I think we've all enjoyed ourselves, especially for the last half an hour after we finished talking about the game against Birmingham. But tomorrow we are back with the preview with Rob Hayes, talking all things Southampton. I certainly will be back talking about Southampton. I think they're one of the most bizarre teams in the Championship. Crazy in some places, terrible in others, but very, very good in others. And I think they've got the best player in the league as well. So it's an interesting game coming up on Tuesday night. That's it from the boys. We'll be back tomorrow. For now, that's it for Fox's sake. Head to Fox8.news and look out for the preview tomorrow. Thanks for listening.